There's been a little bit of a revival of sorts here in the U.S. to maybe more appreciate some of our founding Christian principles. I happen to be Jewish, but I really respect Christianity and what I call our Judeo-Christian civilization. We removed the Ten Commandments from a lot of public schools because it was not seen as appropriate anymore. And then we ended up with trans flags and a new ideology that in some ways was its own version of a religion, in my view. Can America and UK be great without being Christian, without our religion? Like where do we stand on these battles and what's happening right now?
Well, I'm a bit of an old atheist myself who feels that we'd be better off with the rationalism from the classical world rather than the Judeo-Christian tradition that came after it. That's my prejudice, if you like.
That was a more brutal world in many ways, wasn't it? Without the dignity from
yes, but so
Christianity.
was the early Christian world. The takeover of the Roman Empire by Christianity was a jihad. It was pretty unpleasant, and they burned a lot of books and destroyed a lot of knowledge and things like that. I think one's got to not be too kind about early Christianity. Now that and they were horrible to the Jews, of course. Christians were. That said, Christianity then became generally a force for good, and that I do accept. And the days when I wrote a biography of Francis Crick, I'm a friend of Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, people like that. The days when those kind of people thought we were going to see all religion just sort of fade away. I mean, clearly that's not the case. Religion exists inside human heads and always will. And it might take the form of worshipping Greta Thunberg rather than Jesus Christ. Well, I'd prefer Jesus Christ. It might take the form of a very strongly radicalized Muslim version of monotheism, which is on the rampage in parts of the world
Jesus
now.
Christ to that too. Yeah.
Exactly. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who I greatly admire, a wonderful woman, has gone from being a Muslim to being an atheist to being a Christian.
Yes.
And her argument, as I understand it, is, look, we can't fight extremist Islam without a creed of our own.
Yeah.
I suppose that's right, but I worry that you're kind of giving away the principle if you say, we have to have our own version of a superstition in order to win the argument. So I'm afraid you're looking at a bit of an old-fashioned. I like Lucretius, was this wonderful Roman poet
who
said, let's have a bottom-up view of the world without gods.
I do like Lucretius a lot. It's an interesting question when you have no faith, so science explains a lot of things, and science can explain why it's in your interest or why it's rational for something for you for whatever reason. But science, at least to me, can't explain why you should choose to believe that something matters, or why you should choose to risk yourself to fight for something that you care about. It's almost like you have to have a leap of faith to choose that the universe does matter and that my life matters and my country matters. So it feels like faith's very healthy for a society, for people.
Yes, but I don't. I guess my problem is, why does faith have to be attached to a particular set of Middle Eastern myths? That's my problem as well. So, in a sense, I treated Queen Elizabeth II a bit like a god. I thought she was wonderful and couldn't put a foot wrong and was a great unifying force and was there was no particular reason to think that there was anything superhuman about her, but it did enable my culture to have a sort of something above and beyond, as you say, rational self-interest. That's a bit of a weird thing to have said, I admit, but
no, that's very interesting, and I understand what you're saying. Let's circle back to where we started. As someone studying America from the outside, what gives you hope for America's future?
America's been written off before, and wrongly so. You've come to the rescue of the Western world at least twice in the past couple of centuries, and not just militarily, but economically as well. So again, going back to the 1980s, when everyone thought Japan was going to take over, etc., and Asia was going to be better at making all the electronics we needed, America said, no, there's this new industry called software, we're going to invent it, and we're going to absolutely blow you all away with that.
Yeah.
Now, it's really important that America continues to do that because, as I say, the fragmented nature of different states with different competition, people moving from San Francisco to Austin to find a more congenial environment, which is exactly what happened, by the way, in the 1500s in Europe when Gutenberg moved from Mainz to Strasbourg, or the other way around. I can't remember one or the other.
It's always escaping the center of the empire to the frontier, right? That's where
or
you
just a more congenial regime.
It's some places easier.
So So I do think that the federal system is absolutely critical. That plus the respect for enterprise, the love of innovation, the respect for people who buy low and sell high, who end up making a lot out of a little, is incredibly important. And I see signs that this country, having maybe, stuttered a bit in recent years, is getting its mojo back together.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what's happening in energy policy, what's happening in technology, what's happening in infrastructure, what's happening with the space industry, etc., is very exciting. And I'm looking forward to what you guys can help the world achieve in the next 50 years.